Hello, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to your first session. We're excited. Alan and I, to welcome you to this session, first of the day, I believe, first out of seven of this great conference, Big Data and AI Toronto. So the way we're going to be doing is back and forth between Alan and I. We hope you enjoyed this session. My name is Gus Leite. I am a PwC Canada partner in the assurance practice. I am the digital enablement leader for the Assurance Canada. And part of my role is to help our own assurance practice here in Canada be able to digitize and digitalize their own processes and their own skills in order to serve better our clients. And I also help our own clients to go through on the same journey when it comes to upskilling digitization, applying analytics, getting more out of the data that they already have. So quite exciting, but we'll go through everything. And I believe that you will all be excited too by the end of this session. Alan, why don't you introduce yourself and let's get going, because we don't have a whole lot of time.
Awesome, Gus. Great to see you again. I'm Alan Jacobson. I'm the Chief Data and Analytic Officer here at Alteryx. And this morning, what Gus and I wanted to talk with you about, and I know it's a little bit hard on these technology platforms maybe to totally talk together, but feel free to use the chat window, ask questions, throw tomatoes, tell us what you think. Actually, it's Canada, so it would be like maybe beer or lager, I don't know.
There you go, team on.
Hit an ice hockey puck at us. But we're going to talk a little bit about what we see kind of on the horizon over the landscape of different companies going on this maturity journey, this analytic maturity journey, as they try to become more competitive and use analytics really as a competitive weapon to achieve more from a business standpoint. And so I'll open this with the analytic maturity curve developed by the International Institute of Analytics. They've been assessing companies for, I think, over a decade now, and have assessed well over 1,000 companies using this framework of analytics maturity. And I think the startling thing here is that the typical company scores very low on a 5-point scale, a 2.2 out of 5, which, because I don't know about you in Canadian schools, but here in the US, if you got a 2.2 out of 5, that was not a particularly good grade.
Yeah, and I would agree with you.
And what this is showing is that most companies, they have some people at the company that can do really great analytics, but it's very localized. So if you walked out to the typical knowledge worker, whether it's in accounting or tax or finance or marketing or sales or engineering, and you asked a question that deserved a data-driven answer, what's driving attrition? Why did sales go up? The likelihood of getting a very analytic answer is actually relatively low. The technology used by most of the knowledge workers are 30-year-old spreadsheet technologies, and the level of upskilling is relatively weak. And so what we see is companies are investing in a significant way in big data and AI, and probably part of the reason why many of you invested your time to come to a conference like this and talk about it. And I'm not sure who the 1% is that's not investing, but I'm not sure if they're going to be around for too much longer because everybody else is doing it. And the project boards are pretty similar. When you go to a company and ask them, hey, what are your top projects that you're working on? You frequently hear and have heard for really several years, we're building out a data lake, we're automating some processes, we're working on our governance, our analytic and our data governance. These are very common. There are others, but you hear these pretty consistently. And I think, Gus, you've been with a lot of different external clients, and I think you see some of these same things. But while they've been working on these approaches really for years in many cases, and they've been investing significant money in it, what we frequently hear is it's not going fast enough. And even the analytics professionals are saying, this isn't much fun. I mean, we're doing a lot of data janitorial services, cleaning up data, and we haven't really gotten to the good stuff of the analytics that we thought we were going to do. And the question is, well, why is this happening? What's causing this? And what I see pretty consistently is this picture. And I think, Gus, we talked about this earlier. I think you're saying similar things, that you have a small number of, what's pictorially represented here as blue people, whether they're data scientists or just very analytical. They're your power analytic users that can do really sophisticated stuff. And there's a small number of them, and they're kind of using a certain ecosystem of technologies. And then there's like everybody else at the company, the other 70, 80, and 90% of your knowledge workers who are college educated, very bright, understand a lot about math and data, but fundamentally, when they have questions that come in, they frequently have to throw the question over the wall to the blue people to try to get a data-driven answer.
And Alan, like I would add that in some of our clients, sometimes mid-size, smaller size, they don't even yet have a data science team yet. So they start throwing that at the IT team because for the knowledge workers, sometimes it's all of the same. So they're kind of like tossing that out. And sometimes the IT team is not the analytical people that the knowledge workers are expect them to be because they don't understand the difference between a data scientist or a database administrator or a coder. Like there are some of those differences that knowledges do not distinguish. And all to say that it complicates even more and make more people frustrated.
No, that's absolutely right. And so, you've got some barriers. This is part of the divide between the blue side and the green side. And you bring up a good point. You could probably draw another wall and a third wall with IT sitting maybe on a different side. But each team's got challenges. Like, the folks in blue, they don't know the domain perfectly, and so they can't necessarily easily just go off and solve all of these problems. You certainly don't have enough data scientists. So even if you do have data scientists, you probably don't have enough. And then, to your point, Gus, many companies don't even have any data scientists. And many times the folks in blue can come up with great solutions, but they can't necessarily get the folks in green to implement it because the folks in green don't necessarily understand it. So you certainly have some problems there. And the interesting thing, I think, is that this has been studied, this model. The Harvard Business Review did a great article back in 2020, back last year, and they showed that companies that are in this model where people who have questions throw it over the wall to some centralized team, whether it's IT or data scientists, that then throw an answer back, it has a 0% satisfaction rating. I mean, 0% is, again, pretty scathing. You can't get any lower than that. And so companies, I think, are starting to figure out that this really doesn't work. Not only because you have to take a number and wait for an answer, and by the time you get the answer, you don't need the answer anymore. The business has moved on. But it's even more simple. Like, hey, what's driving attrition? I throw that question over the wall. It goes to the data scientist. They say, well, based on the data, the data would suggest this is the issue. And it's very likely that goes back to the folks in green and they go, wait a second, if that's what the data suggests, I'm probably asking the wrong question. Let me try a different question. And it just goes back and forth and back and forth. And really nobody ends up very happy. So the question is, again, why? Why is this happening? If people are investing in this and trying to make it better, why is it happening? And what can you do to fix it? So I'll start with two approaches that we've seen where people have tried these things. It doesn't actually work to try to fix this issue. One is the team says, well, we'll just turn all the green people into blue people. We'll just turn everybody into a data scientist. And while I believe in upskilling very passionately, that's very important, and that is part of the solution, there's a big difference between upskilling some folks and telling your accounting team they're all going to become data scientists. The accountant doesn't necessarily they might want to be the digital accountant of the future, but they don't necessarily want to be a data scientist. So that I haven't seen that. And Gus, I don't know if you've seen companies try this, but certainly something I've seen. Let's have a boot camp and we'll send them for 6 months and make them data scientists.
So I think the way, Alan, like the way that worked within PwC when we done it, because again, in Canada, we upskilled 3,000 CPAs, right?
Yep.
And then I think one phenomenon that happened that was interesting to see that naturally came up to be that, we had a few individuals that turn out that after they have been upskilled, they got bitten by the digital bug, I guess, and they went do a master's in analytics and they kind of like switched their careers. But that was,
the exception.
Like less than 1% of population ended up taking that route. The rest of it was like, I'm great with what I learned. I now know better what to ask. Let's put it this way. I can talk with them on the same language.
Yeah, maybe they can do some simple things, automate a simple process, do some simple analysis, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're at the same level. And then they know when to ask the key question. Another approach we've seen, and this again, it sounds almost ridiculous, but I've seen major Fortune 500 companies do this. The other approach is, well, we have all these tools that the data scientists use. We'll just have everybody else use those same tools. So we're going to have our entire accounting team learn how to program in Python. Good luck. Or here's our Hadoop cluster and Spark. let's just have everybody, we invested all this money in the data lake. Let's just give them access to the data lake and say good luck to them. And again, that doesn't work particularly well either. You do have to provide tools and technologies for the folks in green, but it doesn't mean that those tools and technologies are going to be the same the data scientists are using. And I think that's a very important distinction, is that the tool has to be meant for the persona of who's using it.
We even have some clients that says, "Oh, we don't need those things. We can ask customized reports to our ERP team," and then they got it. I mean, it sounds like it's building even a bigger wall when you go to that.
So I think one of the strategic decisions that companies have made that actually got them here is companies have to decide where they're going to spend their time, their resource, their money, and are they investing kind of on the blue side of this equation, or are they investing in the green side? And what we see is most companies are oversized in their investment. They're putting millions of dollars and a lot of resources into the blue side of the org, and they're not necessarily spending as much money, resource, time, upskilling and doing things on the green side. And I'll have Gus maybe share the PwC kind of where they're headed. But before I do that, I'd love to see if the chat's working here. If the folks that are attending, if in the chat window in the messages, you could type, what percentage of your efforts do you think, and your resources, your dollars, are you investing on the blue side with tools like Hadoop or Databricks, or pick the tool that's really geared for the data scientists versus the technologies and the upskilling for your knowledge workers on the right. And I'd be curious what percentage you think you're investing in the left. If we just people type the percentage on the left, we'll get a sense of what that split is, because it has to add up to 100. Would love to get some sense. But while we see whether the chat works and we get some numbers here, Gus, I'm curious, at PwC, you guys went through a pretty major transformation there, and I'm curious maybe what the balance was and kind of where it is now, where you're headed between these.
Yeah, it's funny. And then I personally joke inside with the other partners that we did not go through a transformation, but we went through an evolution. And the reason I joke about that is transformation, I think it kind of connotes the idea that you would have an and, i.e., oh, we got to the point where I am actually transformed into this something new. And then I joke with them to say, look, there's no end in sight. This is a constant evolution that we need to keep going and keep transforming, I guess, into something new every often, right? So then, but to your point, that was the big realization that we had, where if we do one project investing, being led by whatever number of people in order to transform how we audit our clients, let's say, that did not work. So what we had to do, because there's so many differences in our business where we need to take into consideration different contexts and whatnot, that the power was within what we call the citizens, the workforce. So then we had to say, okay, so the workforce then is the solution for our problem. So like you said, there was this shifting. And again, we're not saying to completely reverse whatever percentage of investments that you're making, but it's are you getting the ROI that you're expecting from your current split? And that was the realization we had when we shifted some. The ROI out of a sudden started increasing on both ends, and that was the very, very interesting component, because the citizens, not only they start developing things that were scalable, being able to use by different teams, making their work more efficient. They were learning more, getting insights, increasing the quality, because certain tools within this also allow you to automate certain things. So we start getting these benefits on both sides, and it's just literally start changing the way we do our work in a major way. So now we just keep going at it and helping our clients to do the same.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in this framework, companies have to figure out, as they invest in data scientists, what typically happens is the data scientists go off and they work on some projects, and hopefully they work on kind of large, important projects. You have a few data scientists and they work on really meaty stuff and hopefully deliver kind of big piles of money, like ROI and value. And then on the right-hand side, when you invest in knowledge workers, they they're not necessarily going to work on quite the same complexity of project probably that the data scientists worked on. They're going to work on smaller things. They automate a simple process, get maybe a smaller level of insight out of something. Although sometimes it may surprise you with all of the domain knowledge that they have on the right-hand side. They know where the gold is buried. Sometimes you can get pretty tremendous value on a single project on the right. But in the end, you have thousands of knowledge workers potentially. And so, it's 1,000 small piles of money versus a few big piles of money. And which one in the end is going to end up bigger? And maybe early on, the left-hand side is bigger than the right-hand side because your knowledge workers are only 1 and 2 and 3 and 5 and 10% upskilled. But over time, as they become more upskilled, you fundamentally see this maybe pivot and it's more on the right than the left. But I think really the amazing thing that I see is when companies are balanced, they're investing in actually both sides. There's a network effect that happens. The people on the right start asking better questions of the folks on the left. And when the folks on the left actually create something, they have great business partners on the right that understand how to leverage it into the business processes and actually change business processes that they own on the right. And so there's a power of not simply picking, I'm going to do 100% on the left and 0 on the right, or 100% on the right and 0 on the left. That actually usually does not result in optimal outcomes. The companies that I see going down this analytic maturity the fastest are companies that are, whether it's 50-50 or 40-60 or 60-40, they're very balanced on these two sides. And guess I'd be curious, what do you see out there? Do you see companies that are more balanced, accelerating faster?
Yeah, no, and then I'll share another example that happened within our own organization that was extremely interesting to see evolve, which was the fact that when we start having discussions about, doing data analysis or even automation of certain procedures or tasks, the immediate reaction is like, oh, we can automate everything. Okay, great. So people get excited, they start going through it. And then at some point, like they start finding some barriers, which is natural in these processes. And they're like, well, we thought we could automate everything, but now we cannot automate anything because certain steps cannot be done. And what was the great, I guess, kind of like Eureka moment within our practice is the idea of like, okay, then break it down. Whatever you can automate, let's automate. Whatever you cannot, you don't. And then from that perspective, you start getting this idea of, okay, on a certain process, let's say, or on a certain task, even if you go even on a micro, smaller level, there are components where you can and cannot automate. So split them up. And then within the components that you can automate, they're the ones that are specific to that particular group, team, client, and they're the ones that are supposed to be exactly the same across the board. And that's kind of like what this slide is talking about, where we have components where we focus to say, you know what, this here is supposed to be exactly the same across the organization. So those ones we're going to bring to the folks on the left, right? The blue people, because they're going to develop it. They're going to work with our methodology guys, quality guys, make sure that it works the way it's supposed to, on regulatory requirements and everything. And then the green guy is going to say, okay, I'm going to take that little piece that is being developed, quote unquote, by the firm, like enterprise developed, and then I'm going to start adding my components to it that I developed because it's specific to my context, to my client, to my team, and I'm going to bundle into that. And then whatever else cannot be automated, we'll continue to do the way it used to. But the Eureka moment was, oh, just because I can only automate 80%, that doesn't mean you should not automate 80%. In fact, 80% is a huge component of that analysis, of that automation. And I think that was the big moment for us. And then when we start doing that, because now we are getting to a point where the automated is under the bridge, if you will, like it's being automated. We know how to do that. Let's focus now on the 20%, which is harder, that demands like maybe more complicated technology or more skilled people, like better data scientists and et cetera, to go through it. But it's great to see how we progressed over time. And that's why I say like, it's not a transformation, but an evolution that I don't know where the end is. And Alan, that's why we'll continue to have a job, I guess.
Yeah, there you go. It's certainly a journey.
But then I think that's the evolution within this, what we call the enterprise level and the citizen-led, because the other thing that we're doing internally and we encourage our clients to do is that scalability and sharing within, your own team, because then one person picked up on another and then say, hey, this is a great idea. Let me pick that up. And then I can start from there and not starting from scratch. But that entails that you have some sort of a program helping people to have that kind of conversation? How do you better share these insights, these conversations? Which means in order for these kind of strategies to work in your company, you have to have the tone of the top there, right? You have to have people truly believe that this thing will make a difference. And again, we're not saying that overnight you're just gonna, snap a finger and say, "Oh, I believe, let's go do it." And that's part of like how we can help people to understand, and we showcase some things. Start small. There are a number of strategies that you can employ in order to make it work. But you have like all these kind of benefits within efficiencies. You have like when it's standardized versus bespoke, and you have the challenges, like I was saying. But in one side, the business-led, the enterprise-led kind of strategies, you have this, lack of workforce engagement, because some of the mistakes we see people making is they develop things, but then, how can I get people to use it? So you no longer have adoption, or they're not necessarily even ready to utilize whatever was developed by the organization, right? And then on the other hand, like I was saying, if you're not organizing yourself in a way that you can collaborate, share, and kind of like move forward together, that's also going to give you a big challenge. But challenges are also opportunities, and we have seen a lot of organizations moving through this, and the benefits are enormous. And on top of all of that, right, not only the numbers, the ROI, or the results that you're getting, but you also get a workforce that is, higher morale. They feel they're learning, and for a number of people, that is like a new chapter in their careers, because we work with organizations where you have, mid-age individuals, and they're kind of like getting excited again of doing something new at work, which hasn't happened in the last 5 to 10 years, like the accountants, the risk managers, and whatnot. So that's I don't know. I take pleasure in watching them grow and develop that way, and I want to see more of it, actually.
Yeah, no, spot on. I mean, I think one of the cool things is that as you watch individuals progress on this journey, it is a very repeatable pattern that you're able to see. Typically, people learn how to manipulate data better than they maybe knew how to do before. And then from that, what we usually see is they then automate a process. They take something that they've been doing manually frequently for years, and they automate it. And to be quite clear, that is not digital transformation. They haven't transformed really anything. They're doing the same thing they always did. It's just a little easier now. It's automated, and it's good. Like, it's saving money, it's saving time, and that's all great. But it really is not transformation when you get to that step. And then the third step of the process is we see people starting to learn some level of analytics. And this isn't necessarily to the level of your data science team, but they learn some level of analytics maybe beyond what they know how to do. And really, once they've done these first 3 steps, this is really where I see magic happen, like light bulbs go off. And people that are your business process owners, your domain experts, their eyes get really big and they go, wait a second. If we can manipulate data and automate processes and perform this kind of analytics, why are we doing the process the way we're doing it? Like, we should change the process. And it's that Eureka moment that really becomes where we frequently see transformation happens. And so, maybe when they get to that step, they need to pull in some data scientists to help them, because it's a bit deeper into the pool. It's harder than what maybe they know how to do. But now you're having the right conversations, and that gets really exciting. It's great to see when companies and when individuals really go on this journey and kind of get to the other side. But to your point, it happens in a very evolutionary way. It happens crawl, walk, run. You don't just jump from the first step to the 4th step. You can't outsource it. You can't just say, I'm going to hire somebody to do the far right hand thing for me, but my domain experts, my knowledge lead, they have no idea what's going on. That doesn't work very well. You can partner up with folks and help go on the journey together. And I'm curious, have you guys been working with clients on kind of this upskilling and how you go through that?
Yeah, absolutely. We very much believe in the idea of like, this is not a training exercise per se. And then I used to joke that some people ask me to define what upskilling means. And I make this analogy about being Bruce Wayne and Batman, because like a lot of people say, oh yeah, we'll open the wallet, we'll buy whatever tools needed or the tools that are being used most in the market, and we're going to give that to the knowledge workers, like Alan, you were saying earlier, right? But Bruce Wayne to be Batman, like I can put you inside the Batcave and that does not make you Batman. I can buy you the Batmobile and the utility belt. That does not make you Batman. What it actually makes you Batman is not only having access to the gadgets and the tools, but also knowing which one to use when and actually have practice using them, right? So that way you have to go through that evolution of getting the teams accustomed and used to using those technologies within your daily works. Like you were saying, Alan, like on the process reengineering, it's actually very interesting to see individuals realizing that there's a difference between automation and transformation where, because like, especially, I mean, for us, I'll admit, like some of the tests that we do, they've been around for many, many years, sometimes decades. But now that we have this tools available to us, out of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, so you start rethinking about what we're trying to achieve here, and then the path to achieve that could be a completely different one, right? Like because now we have access to data that we didn't have before. We have access to tools that are very powerful and yet intuitive to the end user, which is to me like one of the breakthroughs of this wave of technology now, making all of these very powerful technologies very accessible and be able to learn by the knowledge workers. It's extremely excited to see that happening, and we see our own firm as well as the clients we're helping.
Yeah, well, Gus, it's been great talking to you this morning. For those who are attending the session, feel free to come by our virtual booth. It sounds so strange to say that. I'm used to physical booths, not virtual ones, where we do have some resources that are obviously related to this talk, and we can set up time to talk more about how companies are going on this journey and how potentially we can help your company go on the journey. But again, it's been great. It's great seeing you again, Gus, and look forward to connecting offline soon.
Big time, sir. Thank you all for joining.
Take care.